Today's startup offers an inclusive and unbiased stage for startup founders to shine and share their entrepreneurship and startup journeys to inspire international audiences on tech news around the world. Today's startup features Smartcore founder CEO George Akilimali. Welcome, George. You have to unmic, George.
Much, Sherry. Thank you very much. So yes, and thank you very much, Sherry, and the organizers of the room. My name is George Akilimali, and I'm the co-founder and the group CEO of Smartcore Technologies. We are a company which is based in Tanzania, which is available within East Africa, but also we are registered in Hong Kong, China. So Smartcore is supporting universal access to quality education through integration of technology, but also a better education finance. In other words, we are just making learning fun, but also engaging and accessible to youth in sub-Saharan Africa. So I would like to start kicking off this conversation by talking about where we actually started. So the story of Smartcore goes back when the founders, including myself, we were in secondary schools about 12 years ago. So when we were selected to join one of the public high schools in the country, and during the first 2 years of high school, we experienced a lot of difficulties and challenges in learning. Like this is how it is for many other learners in secondary schools across Africa. So the same challenges like lack of books, lack of learning resources, lack of teachers. So for starters, for us, for example, we spent about the first 6 months without teachers in any subjects which we were supposed to learn in high school. So the high school education is about 20 months, and the first 6 months we completely had no teachers in any subjects, including the advanced mathematics. So that was one of the challenges which we actually faced when we were in high school. But at the same time, the school library was having very limited number of relevant learning materials. So there are some few books, but most of them, they were not relevant to what we were actually wanted to learn. So we also had a computer room, a basic computer room, which was donated by an international organization. But at the same time, we did not have access to internet. So the computer was there, but also they had no resources in it. Back then, it was just Windows XP installed, and we don't have any resources to actually use the computer to learn. So the success during that time was mostly peer support from our fellow students. There are some few students who actually had the capacity, extra capacity to go outside the school and learn through tuition and extracurricular. Then they came back and actually helped us to learn through them, so that they became teachers because they actually get a chance to get it to extracurricular outside the school environment. So we survived that period, but that's where we actually identified the gap which is existing, especially in secondary school education. And I personally founded the passion to education during that moment. And I actually started thinking of what can I do and how can I do to actually make change around the education sector. So fast forward after high school, we managed to pass the high school stage. I remember I graduated with the highest score possible, and then they went to university. So after high school, I decided to actually take the information technology course at university. And during my first year of university, I was introduced fully into the world of technology. So, and immediately after that, I realized that the potential of technology to transform almost every sector in the world, especially education. So I saw firsthand what technology can actually do when it actually leverage to make sure that the sector is improved, with regardless it's health, education, or any other sector. So I immediately realized I can use technology to actually transform the challenges which we actually faced during the years of secondary schools. So immediately I started working on a solution around integration of technology into learning. And back then, my first year, we started collecting open source online learning materials. So we started collecting books, articles, videos, audio content all over the internet, and load them into a CD or a DVD drive, then distribute them across secondary schools, which were located nearby the university environment. So we started just by finding video through YouTube, through Google search, and just getting them together and put them within the CDs without even arranging them in a proper way, but just giving them to students so that they can have the resources for them to actually learn. And immediately after we started doing that, we started to notice the impact in terms of academic growth. So the people or the students who were using our products were actually excelling in terms of academic growth. So they started to get more grades. I mean, they have started to improve their grades. They started to feel more comfortable in examination and all kind of things. But at the same time, we started to see the interest in terms of the use of technology in learning. Uh, in most cases, by that back then, people were saying like a student cannot use technology in learning, especially the student in secondary schools. So we started to see the interest which is growing rapidly. Students were very, very interested about the product. They were very excited about it. They were really using it in real time. So we started to see like the changes immediately. So when we were starting this, we just wanted to help because we faced the challenge. We saw that we can actually help the student to learn through digital. So we were offering all these things, all the resources we were collecting, all the CDs we were buying using our own money. Then we were just giving them to students for free. But over time, almost a year after starting that program, we realized that we cannot keep doing this for free because we started to see the costs which are increasing, like the operation costs, finding the resources, buying the inventories like CDs and DVDs. So we started to see the costs increasing. So we started to charge, I think during my second year of university, we started to charge the students and the teachers who are using our platform approximately $1 per product, whereby people could now just pay $1 and get access to the CDs or DVDs which we are providing. And the $1 which we are collecting, actually we were using it mostly to push people to actually produce more content, to find some various content on the internet and all that kind of thing. So we are also growing the database of the content, at the same time producing more CDs to make sure that we can reach as many people as possible. So that was during the university. So fast forward in 2017 is when we actually founded Smartcore. We actually registered it as a for-profit, but we put an element of a social enterprise. So we registered a for-profit social enterprise, ideally to start growing this vision, which was born almost 6 years from by the moment we are registering the company. So yes, so that's a little bit of a background. So Smartcore was founded ideally to address two major interdependent challenges in education across Africa. So one of them was the quality and relevance of education. As I said, we have seen it firsthand that we are not getting the quality education because of a lot of factors, including the resources. So that's when we were at university, we realized that this is not just a problem for Tanzania. We saw that this is a problem for East Africa, but not only East Africa. We expanded and see that it's the same problem, the same challenges which is existing within Sub-Saharan Africa. So we started to do some simple research, understanding the problem in details. Then we realized that we came to UNESCO, their website, and realized that there are more than 65 million secondary school age children who are completely out of schools. This is only in Sub-Saharan Africa. And unfortunately, as I said, even the few percent which got the chance to get into schools, the quality of education is very low, and the learning resources were limited, but also does not prepare them for the job market. So UNESCO, according to UNESCO, they say that out of 89% of the students who are enrolled in primary education, only 9% make it to the tertiary education, and less than 6% graduate. So out of 89%, only 6% actually reach the final years of secondary education. So this gives us a picture like what we are doing is actually a big and huge problem, not only in Tanzania, but across East Africa and across Sub-Saharan Africa. So we started to dig deeper in terms of our locality, like in terms of Tanzania, like what the problem is in Tanzania and how big it is also. So we came to the realization that for the case of Tanzania, almost 70% of the children who are aged between 14 and 17 years old, which is the secondary school age children, are literally not enrolled in secondary education. And only 3.2% of that are enrolled in the final 2 years. So people are dropping out. So the few of them which are getting the chance to get into schools, also they are facing the same challenge, and most of them are dropping out before even reaching the final years. So this was the problem which we actually saw. But also we decided to say, like, let's think bigger. Like, is it the problem just the education system? Is the problem only the students are dropping out? Is it just because of the resources, or is it just because of lack of teachers? So we also came to realize that a good number of parents in schools want to provide the quality education which we are talking about, but they don't have the proper financial resources to support them to do that. So there are parents who want their kids to get quality education, but they are facing financial problems due either to limited access to flexible education finance. So we realized there's another problem which is related mostly to finance in education. So that's where we actually started to formulate everything. And fast forward, so to address these challenges, which are literally quality of education, but also the access to financial access to finance for education, we created a blended technology and finance solution, which included our flagship product by the name Kisomo. This is a data-driven platform which is available online and offline, which actually help students to get access to secondary school education, skills education, and tertiary education in Africa. So the platform actually provides locally relevant and interactive digital learning content. By content, I mean which are in form of videos, real life videos, animations, and interactive quizzes. And also the platform leverage modern technologies such as artificial intelligence and a little bit of big data analytics, ideally to provide the best learning experience and also real-time education data. So we also came to realize that a lot of decisions which are made around education in Africa are based on the assumption or long-term data. So in order to know, like, if the students are actually performing or not performing, you have to wait for the final year examination, which always happen twice, let's say once a year. So that's also we realize is a problem because we have to get real-time data. It's always difficult to make decisions because by the moment you are making a decision, we have a good number of people who are already affected by the problem. So we started to integrate our solution with real-time data, whereby we can actually tell, we can advise, we can tell the government and the stakeholders that there's this challenge, there's this subject which is bringing problem to the student or to the teacher, so that we can immediately address without waiting further. And as I mentioned, the platform itself so allows students to have fun and engaging learning experience by accessing this content, as I mentioned, videos, animation, and interactive quizzes. And this content actually helps students to improve their skills, but at the same time to improve their academic performance. Also, the platform allows teachers and the schools to streamline but also monitor individual student progress. So they can actually see what individual students are doing. They can see, as I said, real-time data on the student progress and make a decision around that immediately. But also, the platform allows education stakeholders like governments, multinational educational organizations, and the like to actually make informed decisions and also influence the policy making decisions. So we're actually providing real-time data on all matter related to education in Africa. So
That's very good. You're doing a very good thing to your society in Tanzania. I also read from your profile that you have won several awards and recognition around the world. Can you elaborate on that?
yes, so since we started in 2017, we have been working with different partners. We also been recognized by different individuals in different organizations around the world. And for example, we in 2019 we were recognized by Africa Union as one of the top 50 innovations in Africa, which are actually transforming education in Africa. But also we won the Africa Business Hero Award as a top 50 finalist in 2020. We also have been the winner of Dubai Expo Live 2020 in 2019, where they actually invited us to Dubai and showcased our innovation, and we got some funding around that. So we've been recognized in different organizations, both local and international, and that has been one of the very success story for us. Like where people can actually see what we are doing and can actually recognize and say this is something which is interesting. So yes.
Congratulations, George. Based on your story, you actually started your startup journey very young when you were still in the university. What or who actually inspire or motivate you to do that?
Yeah, so I always say that we actually inspired by the situation which we were facing. Like as I said, we had a very challenging secondary school education. We actually saw the problem firsthand. We experienced it firsthand. So that was a total motivation for us to find a solution around that. But apart from just seeing the challenge itself as like we were actually affected by the challenge itself, but also we saw the potential of it. So I remember seeing, I saw a course on Coursera when I went into university, and I realized that if Coursera can actually do this for university students and people who are actually in higher level of education, then we can replicate the same ideas to these youngsters. So that was the inspiration, seeing the world, like how people are doing in the world. Then we realized that we can actually replicate this. We can, of course, minimize it a little bit to make sure that it actually fits the local context. But we realized that we can actually replicate what is existing in the world and make it local, and also make sure that we make the impact we need.
Mm-hmm. George, so what is your dream for Smartcore? Where do you want to bring it to?
So we want to be the best digital learning company in Africa. Ideally, we are not just want to be the company which make money, but we want to leave the mark. We want to make sure that we create the impact which we need, and that has been the vision for us, like helping almost 10 million learners in Africa to get access to quality education. So that's our ultimate goal. But we know that we have to take baby step. We have to work with people. We have to partner with others to make sure that we reach that goal. But ideally, we just want to make sure that every youth in Africa can get access to quality education.
Mm-hmm. Great. In your startup journey, what is the biggest challenge you have overcome so far?
I can say funding. I think that has been the primary challenge for us, but also has been the best learning moment for us, or the learning challenge, because when we started this, when we actually decided to make this as a business, but also as a social enterprise, we started to think about funding. How do we get funding to make sure that we can sponsor? I mean, we can support our production, we can support our distribution, and all the process involved. Then we came to realize that nobody is funding, most people don't fund education, especially in Africa. There's a lot of investment which is coming into Africa, but very few of them are actually directed into education. So we decided to pivot that model. So we fundraised for almost a year, the first year, then we realized that we are not going to reach our target if we are doing that way. Then we pivoted our model and created a business model around that. Then we started generating revenue immediately. So that's what's actually kept us going over the time, almost for the past 3-4 years. Ideally, we started to generate revenue immediately after realizing that we cannot fundraise externally. But I think that was one of the biggest challenge. And apart from the funding, I think another biggest challenge which we faced during the course of time was access to mentors and I can say mostly capacity building. Like we have the team, we have the local people, we are doing things which have not been done in the local ecosystem. So we always have to look for external support in terms of when we need to integrate in new technologies, when we need to integrate new platform, new payment options, and all that kind of thing. So I think one of the challenges was getting the mentors, the people actually who can actually help us to reach the goals which we need. So I think that's why the major two challenges for us.
Thank you, George. George, are you ready for audience Q&A? Although we are a bit early.
Definitely,
Because I saw a big
definitely.
stage now, so I'm just I always feel that the audience always have very interesting questions and can bring you to various direction depending
No
on how you
problem.
answer
No
it.
problem.
Okay, we are now open for Q&A. So those people in the room, if you would like to ask George a question, you can DM me or you can raise your hand. Raise your hand, I'll bring you up on stage. And those who are already on stage, please flash your mic if you want to ask the first question. Okay, Messi, go ahead.
Hi, George. It's really nice to hear like Africans solving African problems. So congratulations for doing that. That said, I'm gonna try to shoot the first question. So, as you know, in Africa, the biggest population lives in the countryside, where access to electricity, access to connectivity is really very limited. I was just wondering, are you based in targeting only the people who are in the cities, or your solution would be targeting and just extending to be including the population that lives in the countryside? And how are you trying to access those people who may have a challenge to be connected, to be able to access your solutions without being connected offline or things like that? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Messi, for the great question. And yes, it's really true that Africa has a lot of challenge in terms of technology and accessibility. We've seen it firsthand. A lot of students and teachers, they live in places where they don't even have electricity. And even if they have electricity, they don't have internet access. And even if they have internet access, they don't have like a proper internet access to actually streamline and see videos and all that kind of things. So we have seen that firsthand. And of course, when we started, we were just creating a solution which was like used mostly by the people who are living in urban areas, the students who are in schools around urban areas. But over time, I believe in 2019, we started to pivot our model in terms of product. So we diversified our product. We created an offline version of the platform. So now we have an offline accessible platform which can be accessed across multiple devices, including smartphone, tablets, computers, and any other types of electronic device which can actually accept a wireless signal. It doesn't matter. It's a radio, an FM, AM radio. As long as it accepts a signal, a wireless signal, then we can actually deliver our content into that. And of course, that's the model we are using to make sure that we actually reach to the marginalized community or to the people who are at the bottom of the pyramid. But also, that's also bringing other challenges in terms of the business model. But that's what we've been doing, and that's what has been like our biggest success, because most of our users are coming from the environment where they don't have access to internet. Of course, we have the online version of the platform, like we have the mobile application, we have the web version of the platform, which can be accessed anywhere in the world. But also we have the offline version, which we actually push more, and most people are using the offline version compared to the online version. I hope I answered your question, Miss.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Messi.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, who would like to ask the second question? Please flash your mic. Okay, Lavina.
Hi, George. Yeah, really great to hear your journey and Smartcore's, success to date. Coming from, the environment of ecosystems for startups within Africa, I'm always curious to know what is that journey been like in particular for you? And I know you kind of touched on it a little earlier in terms of investments probably being the largest hurdle, but just an overall view in terms of the support of the ecosystem, or anything that you from a startup perspective would like to see done better.
Thank you very much, Lavina. So that's an interesting question, because I think I'm one of the very few people who actually started to look for support outside the existing ecosystem within the country early on, after realizing that I could not get the support I need internally. So right now, for example, for the case of Tanzania, there's a lot of activity which is going on in terms of innovation hubs, startup accelerator programs, a lot of like startup activities which are happening to support the startup which are existing within the country. And this is also across the East African community. But when we started this, I immediately realized that most of the things which I need, most of the support I need, I could not find it within the existing ecosystem. So I started working and finding different external ecosystem to make sure that we can get the support we need. I remember I've been into a lot of trainings outside the country, more than the ones which I actually did within the country. So that's the situation. But of course, it's changing. It's changing rapidly. A lot of activity is going on right now to make sure that startup can get the support they need, especially in terms of funding, in terms of access to mentors, in terms of access to partners, in terms of access to technology. So that has been the situation. And I think when you look at our website, you find that we have a lot of partners. Ideally, because we always look for supports. Most of them are outside from Europe, Asia, all the way across the world. Ideally, just to make sure that we get the support we need. So I hope I answer your question, Pina. Thanks.
Yeah, brilliant.
Thank you, Lavina. Dr. Chandler?
Yes, thank you so much. I really enjoy listening to your passion and your desire to help the world. And so, one of the things that I notice is you've been like a champion for gender equity, and you gave a talk on the women of internet governance. And so, I was just wondering if you can kind of share that with the audience, because I think that was very, how would I say it, very impactful for what you do for everybody. This is
Thank you, Dr. Chandala. So one of the things which I'm trying to do right now is actually to show people, to show women, to show youth within Africa that they can actually achieve whatever they are planning to achieve. So right now we are trying to push that, and I think one of the thing which I did this year was the talk on the internet governance, and of course we were just trying to inspire them, to tell them like. What the potential access to internet, access to technology can actually give to women, and how they can actually use it in an effective way to make sure that they grow as the individual, but also as business or startups. So that's one of the part where I'm actually really, really passionate about. And I know that I'm not there yet, but at least I have some experience for the past 6, 7 years, which I've been working towards the digital economy, especially in Africa. So I think that's my input on that.
Thank you. Who would like to ask the next question? Heyman? Oh, go ahead.
So my question is, I'm very low on battery. I hope we can still answer it. So thank you so much. This is highly interesting. Could you elaborate on the business model, and are you profitable? So how does it exactly work, and who pays it? The schools, the students? What's the business behind it? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Simon. So our business model is subscription based. So we have a subscription model where schools can pay. So we have the B2B model and the B2C model, whereby for the B2B model, we actually let the schools pay on behalf of the students. So schools pay subscription for to access our platform and content and everything within it, and we actually charge them in a yearly license of approximately $1,000 per school. Uh, but also we do have like individual access whereby parents of the kids can actually buy membership for their kids, either in a monthly basis or on a weekly basis. And mostly, I think the most extended one is a quarterly basis. So they can actually pay, which is a little bit cheaper, approximately $2 a month, to get access to the platform, the content, the evaluation, and everything around it. So our business model is mostly focused on the subscription. But now we are also looking into education finance. So we are now looking into commission-based revenue, but we're still in progress on that. But mostly our revenue has been depending on the subscription. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you so much. Can I ask you a follow-up on this? Is that okay?
No problem. No problem,
Okay,
Simon.
no problem. Okay, so and does that, I mean, does that sort of work out to be, if that's not a business secret, to be profitable, or because for the sustainable part of the view. So can you survive without external funding? Did I get that correct before?
Definitely. So we are already profitable since the first year of operation. Like we've been running into profit since day one. So we are surviving that way. So that's why even as of now, as I'm talking to you now, we haven't done any fundraising, any external fundraising. Ideally, because we are surviving using our revenue. But we are, of course, now we're starting to think about scaling in terms of horizontal scaling, meaning scaling across the country, but also scaling across the region. Now we are starting to think about how can we do the fundraising, but we already have been profitable since 2017.
This is amazing. Thank you so much. One last question. Do you differentiate between schools? Like if a very poor rural school, could they pay less? And then like a rich capital school maybe pays a bit more, so you can sort of get a bit of cross subsidies for the social enterprise part, or is it all the same price?
So we do subsidize. So we do subsidies, and we actually for the public school we normally charge them less compared to the private schools because we know that the public schools in most cases they could not pay. But of course we are still trying to figure out what the best way we can actually service the public schools because those are the majority of the schools, by the way. So we are now thinking of how can we do that because if we do subsidize only, I think it will reach a point where we will have to struggle to survive because like if more than 60% of the schools are public schools and they're all sold in a subsidized manner, then we will have to figure out another model around that so that we can survive. But we are doing that right now to make sure that we actually help the people who cannot afford to pay for the product.
Thank you, Simon, for the good questions. Next, who would like to ask the next question? Please flash your mic. Kiran, go ahead.
Thanks, Cheryl. George, just a question. I was just, I'm trying to compare Tanzania to I'm from Sri Lanka. One of the things that I found, I know that you keep mentioning how difficult it is funding, and something that I also experienced in Sri Lanka when I was trying to drive some education initiative. I'm just wondering that the diaspora population in Tanzania. So, I think I read somewhere there's about 500,000 to 1 million people globally, right, based as a diaspora population. And I know for coming from a Sri Lankan background, there's a lot of charities in the countries that they live overseas, and they're always setting up charities and organizations who are very passionate about back home. They're always constantly doing education initiative. Have you ever thought about reaching out to or building that bridge, using them as a kind of a lever for you to spread your message, globally, in a way for them to, drive that funding for you?
Yes, Kiran. So yes, we tried that, and I think if you heard me right, I mentioned that one of the area which we are exploring right now is education finance, where we saw that there's a big gap in terms of education finance, like people don't have access to flexible education finance. And one of the area which we actually look at it very closely is the diasporas, because we saw that in 2020 only. More than 15% of the remittance which were done in Africa were mostly focused on education. So you can imagine, like for every $100 which was sent in Africa, $15 was $15 was literally targeting the education sector. So we are looking into that, and we are trying to figure out how can we work with global banking and fintechs across Africa to make sure that we can bridge the gap of finance, especially in education. So we really looking into that, but we are still exploring the option. And I think that was one of the reasons why we decided to register a Hong Kong sister company, ideally because Hong Kong is one of the financial hub in the world. So we saw like we can leverage that and see how we can make sure that we bridge that gap. But definitely. So if you have any connection around that, I'll be happy to take on and have a conversation on that.
So in that, George, there was someone that I used to work with. Her name was, I don't know if you're familiar. Her name was Leila Jana. Unfortunately, she has this organization called Summer Source, but also Summer Source. Basically, what they did is that they were driving it. So her passion was that she wants to give every kid in Africa a digital skills. So she had a base in I think Uganda, in Kenya. So initially she started, in a kind of charitable, model, and then she kind of pivoted further. But unfortunately, she passed away a couple of years ago due to her, some health issues. But what happened is her company, they pivoted a little bit, and now they have a VC funding, and they raised about 70 million Series B about a few weeks ago. So I think there's something that you can probably I'll connect you if because they went through. I remember she went through a 15-year period where she was just it's all about social good and moving the arc towards humanity and giving everyone the right to work and the skill, all of that, and then she realized that there's a point that she has to slightly pivot in order to attract certain level of funding, and now they had 100 million over the last last 6 months. and still the motivation is that social impact and doing a societal change. So it might be quite something very useful for you to probably explore. And I would love to connect you with the CEO of Summer Source. They're based in San Francisco. And I also, when Leila Jana was alive, I took her to Sri Lanka, and I was trying to set up that similar initiative in Sri Lanka where I wanted all the kids, from girls, especially from age 12 to 18, to learn digital skills. And blockchain was one of those initiatives that we looked at, and AI, and data science. So her work is around AI and data science, and getting people who can't read or write in order to participate in this ecosystem, and it's very successful now, and it's getting a lot of publicity. So I'll definitely will introduce you. So I'm sure that that can help you, trying to be, given that she did in Kenya and Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kiran. I'll be looking forward to that connection.
Thank you, Kiran. Wow, that's good news for you, George.
Definitely.
Messi, you want to ask another question?
Yeah, just related, really related what Kiran was saying. As you know, Cheryl, that I am actually building an equity crowdfunding platform targeting the African diaspora to be investors. So, just curious, George, what would have been like your what would have solved your problem? That's exactly what I'm doing right now, targeting those small ticket investors from the diaspora, the African diaspora. And I would be just really, really interested to know, and also will be really helpful for, the early stage African startups like what you went through. It would be very helpful to have that type of solution that I'm working on. What would have been sorry, I had a phone call. So what would you have really helped? Would it have shortened your search for funding by a year? What would be the structure, what you were looking for, and what would have been your ideal source of funding?
Yes, Messi. I think if you are building a platform which actually will help startups in Africa to fundraise using the diaspora, I think that would be super, super great and super cool, because like I've seen it firsthand that if we have the platform relevant in the platform where for targeting the African market, it will always help a lot. Because right now, for example, when we try to fundraise, I remember like 6 months ago, I went to this investor and they were willing to invest, but they wanted somebody to do co-investment. So they wanted somebody else to jump in also to do like half investment, and we couldn't find the second person. So the investor backed out because just we could not find one person who could just uh, baby join hands. So it could be an angel investor, it could be a VC, whatever type of investment. And of course, for us, for example, for our case, we are open for any type of investment. So all the way from equity based investment all the way to debt, because we are already profitable, we are already making money, we are already making revenue, so we know exactly that we can handle whatever type of investment we are looking for. But in most cases, most people in Africa prefer equity based investment because it actually gives the room for you to actually innovate and grow together. So I think I'll be really happy if you have that platform, or if you can also connect us through that platform. I'll be really, really happy to jump on board on that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Actually, yes, we are getting there. And one of the things that we are doing at the moment is also getting the feedbacks from the founders as well as the diaspora investors, that we are building a network of those diaspora investors which we're starting. And some of the things they tell us is, who does the oversight once we give you the money, to make sure that the use of funds, to make sure that you're gonna use that money and also grow, expand, and things like that. So that's why I was asking the feedback, so we can incorporate that type of efficient solutions. So thank you. I will reach out to you in the back channel. Thank you.
Can I quickly say
Thank
something? I'm very low on battery. Sorry, very low, very low. I'm a small ticket investor, mostly crypto. If the platform, or not African diaspora, but if the platform was also crypto accessible, I would love to, have projects where I can put a couple K in it. I'm not big, but if that a few thousand, that's what I can do. That'd be amazing if I could invest in a startup like George's. Thank
Thank you,
Simon,
Simon.
Simon, I think I'm glad you mentioned that about crypto, George. Another thing I wanted to mention, but I didn't want to bring the crypto into this. But there is an opportunity in that space, which is that if you look at a lot of the big blockchains, for example, one of them is being, let's say, EOS, for example. A lot of these blockchain, how they operate is their tokens have an inflation, certain level of inflation every year, meaning some of them might have 4%, tokens being created every year. And when you think about how the growth of some of these blockchains, some of them gone from 10 billion to 100 billion, right? So the value of those tokens are going up, and within that 4% every year they create, there is a certain level they allocate for a social cause, especially education for kids or education around social work, right? So one of the opportunities that you should explore, given that there's a lot of people talking about crypto and a lot of people are launching blockchain, and there are so many successful blockchain, just reach out to them and put a pitch in a way that you are in this space where you are educating, you want to change Africa, disrupt Africa through education, and they can think about 4% of 100 billion every year being created, and they're giving 1% to they have a allocated 1% pot, which is meant to go towards social causes where the people are focused on building, and because they need to crypto need to grow, and education is so they created this. I know some blockchains have created this, and they have a pot. They look for people who are in this space to educate, and empower the next generation in through education. So that could be another area that people don't explore. But there are blockchains like EOS. You can reach out and say, hey, I'm this thing, and I'm in Tanzania. This is what I'm trying to do. I know that you have this certain fund that is allocated towards social. Can I just pitch for it? For them, throwing a couple of million, it's not it's not a lot, because they have enough, in terms of the fund. So that could be something worth exploring. Reaching out to a big blockchain where do some research around. If you want, I can help you. Where they have a dedicated funds focused on social causes.
Thank you, Kiran. Tom, you have a question? George,
do.
Hold on, please. George, your mic is on. Do you want to respond to Kiran first before I move on to Tom?
No, Cherry, you can go on. No problem.
Okay, great. Tom, you can go ahead.
Thanks, Cheryl. George, you're doing some phenomenal work. I've seen some of the startup scene in Kenya and really impressed with everything that you're doing. One of the things you mentioned, I like to kind of follow up on. You mentioned that even some of the incubators, maybe in Tanzania, that there were things related to funding and mentoring that are still in great need. I would love to connect with you. Let's talk offline. Some of the things that we're doing in Chicago, we have a program called Ageless Innovators, where we actually are pairing, junior people with older people to help them, mentor them along. That's something also that I've seen happen at the Northwestern University and Purdue incubators that I work with. So let's talk about that, but keep up the great work. And if there's a lack of mentors, there's ways now in this virtual world to make that happen. So let's talk.
Thank you very much, Tom. I would definitely love to get that access to the mentors. Definitely.
Thank you, Tom. Next, David or Valerie, you have questions for George?
Yes, thank you for permitting me to ask a question. So, George, very inspiring. I was wondering, where on your roadmap have you been thinking about how to somehow replicate the social aspect of school? Because there's been so much in the last 19 months about children absorbing everything through the computer and not having that social component for learning how to have relationships and interactions. So was just wondering what your thoughts were on that as you scale and grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. I hope I understand your question or your input. I think one thing which we are doing is actually we, apart from just pushing the people to go for digital learning or digital technologies, we're also pushing the skills. Things like, we have like very specific skills. Although we are dealing with the secondary schools students and teachers, we also push content around emotional intelligence, things like personal development, all these things which can actually help these people to not only become computer savvy, but also become really human being and actually understand what the world actually needs. Because as you say, like we don't want just people who actually perform well in class. We also need people who can actually empathize with others, who can actually connect with the people around them, who can actually think critically and all that kind of thing. So we are trying to integrate that as much as we can, and we are also trying to push the same as we are pushing the other type of content which are distributed within our platform. I hope I responded to that. Thanks.
Oh, no, great. Thank you. Because I think we can just always focus on the technology component, but we forget these are young children, young adults that need social components of meeting people and then just being in front of a computer all day long. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Hey, man, you want to ask a question too, right?
Yeah, hi. Sorry, a lot of the questions have been answered, so thank you very much, George, for being here. I'm just also curious, though, George, you had the opportunity to gauge how sort of a CD or stored-based education fared versus the streaming education. Have you noticed a difference in the student performance, like when they had actually access to streaming versus stored?
Sorry, Henman, can you rephrase that? I
Yeah,
think I
sorry.
didn't.
Sorry. You when you started off with CDs, right? You actually stored all the offline. You stored the records offline, and then you got into more of the streaming, right? You had your educational modules streamed for, especially in the city areas. Have you noticed a difference between people who store their like the educational modules in a computer or at a site without internet versus those who had internet access? Was there a performance difference between those two student groups?
Yes, definitely. So there is a difference. There is a difference because, for example, for the one who actually access the content which are preloaded, let's say within their devices, their computers or their smartphones, these guys, they don't get a chance to get real-time update of the content, understanding, like, you actually don't see what is happening within them, the challenges they are facing and all that kind of things. So for the one who actually get access to the streamed version of the content, the one which are actually real-time, they actually get more value within the platform and they actually perform better compared to the one who actually just get a preloaded content. And I think that has been the challenge. We have seen it not only within our platform, but also within the other platform which are brought with international organizations. So we always seen them like they preload the books, they preload the content, and believe that students will learn and perform using that content. But in most cases, the learning journey itself is a little bit challenging. So we always believe that uh, having real-time data to understand what the learning behavior, doing like a real-time recommendation of what to change, what to learn, seeing the evaluation and all that kind of things actually makes more difference compared to the one which are preloaded with the content and the evaluation, and you see it once a month to see if the students are actually progressing. So I think that's my take on that.
Thank you, George. Anyone else have a question? Please flash your mic. You can always ask another question if you like to. If not, Kiran, you asked me to post an article. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yes, hi. So that article, it's going back to the founder. Like I said, her name was Leila Jana. So she started. When I was listening to George speaking, it just reminded me of exactly how she was 15 years ago. And she was all about disrupting, decentralizing education, making education accessible, for all. But what she tried to do is that she wanted to give tools so that she can get people underprivileged, from in Kenya, in Uganda, give them a digital work, how to transform them from mundane job on the field to doing a digital work. So that's where her journey started, and kind of resembles what George is trying to. He's in a very difficult spot because he's trying to innovate, and wherever the environment that he's in, and he's constantly finding an innovative way to break out of that and keep going. And she did that, and But her work, where it began, and it's ended up, the article you shared, that they had a funding of 70 million recently, and so it's kept pivoting and pivoting and pivoting, and now the core focus is still the same. It's about providing digital skills to underprivileged, the women who are working in the field and in the farms, bring them into a room and then teaching them the basic digital skills. In this case, AI and data sorting. But now they go funding. So I think, George, where your heart is in the right place, your intention is in the right place, and you're focused on an area which definitely need a disruption, right? So I think the fact that you are here on Clubhouse, and there are many people, I'm sure, that will share the similar thoughts as me, which is that there will be something will trigger soon, which will, that aha moment, right? And you're making all the right moves. So I wish you all the best. And so I'll connect you to this CEO Summer Source, and maybe there's a lot of lesson that you can learn from how they kept pivoting. I remember there was a time that they didn't have any money, and they were literally were thinking, why is it so hard to do something to change the world? But then they kept going. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel, buddy. So I'll reach out to you, and that's what that article is, that we shared. But I'll connect you to them so that hopefully they can share some lessons with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kiran. This is very exciting, and I think, as you said, like we always learn from the people who actually walk the same path. So I'll be really excited to connect with these people and see like what we can learn from them, and they may give us some insight of how to navigate some challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kiran. Thank you, Kiran. Hi, David. You want to ask a question?
Sure, thank you. I appreciate it, Cheryl. I was curious about something. I've been in tech. I've owned tech companies and tech entrepreneur in med tech and other fields, but fintech and others. But I also co-founded a charter school in Louisiana. It's called the International High School of New Orleans, and we founded that in 2010. And now it's a high school that now has about 700 students in international baccalaureate programs. So I've had some experience with education and obviously some of the ed tech companies around that space. But my question was more about sort of your growth patterns and what you see. It's interesting to me that, when you talk to people. I'm getting feedback. I'm sorry about that. But when I've learned from Clubhouse and speaking to many people from Africa, and I've done some stuff with Africa before. We've done some projects in Angola and 15, 20 years ago. So I've been following the various markets in Africa for a while. But what's new to me is the focus on the diaspora. And, when I'm listening to yourself and Messi and others speak of the diaspora, I'm curious that, it's interesting to me how you all look at the diaspora as almost an asset that can be leveraged, and that how the diaspora can be used to grow people from Africa and companies and projects from Africa. So I'm curious about that because, being in the U.S., we're very U.S. centric, and we don't really see the point of view from other countries as they look for global expansion. Obviously, it's happening, but so I'm curious about in being an African, when you talk about the diaspora and you want to grow and growing from Tanzania, growing around Africa, but then beyond. I mean, do you see Europe as maybe growth opportunities? The U.S., Canada, maybe Latin America, China. Where do you see that you can leverage that diaspora, and or am I wrong about that? I mean, how do you look at it that way? I'm just curious from your point of view about how African startup entrepreneurs and things like that would be looking at growth patterns globally.
Yes, David. Thank you very much. So I think I'll speak my point of view. Then maybe Messi also can jump in on that and see like what their thought on that. But for me, I think when we think about diaspora, I think when it comes to diaspora who are coming from Africa, we look at it in this angle whereby most of the people who are living in diaspora have access to a certain level of financial or a finance. So they have a certain higher level finance access, and they are actually sending a lot of money back home. That's the reality. Like they are sending money back home. But the problem which is existing right now, the money which they send, they actually just send it as let's say, the money to buy some groceries and all that kind of things, then they are not actually either invested or reproduced to make sure that they actually grow. So I think that's why when we think about the diaspora now, we also start thinking about who can actually help the money which the diaspora are sending back home can actually grow instead of just being used, let's say, to finance startup or just finding some grocery within the home community. So I think that's my take on diaspora, but I think Messi can also maybe add on that.
Thank you, George. I really I'm trying to not hijack your presentation. So just like what you said, the diaspora actually is sending a lot of money to the continent. By my research in 2019, $80 billion have been sent back to the continent as remittances. And also research indicates that the African diaspora is also one of the number one and number two, number three, depending on which African country you look at, is the one of the highest investors in the continent. So what we are trying to do is, if we can actually target a very small fraction of that to be able to finance startups like what George mentioned, if he had access to early stage startups, pre-seed, where the financing is really, really low. And that's why most amazing African startups don't get off the ground. And that's why I think the focus is on Africa, because the venture capital that's coming into Africa is always after you are successful. Like George, where he is right now, I'm pretty sure they will be looking at him, but not when he was struggling, a while earlier. So the risk tolerance, as well as the impact, as well as supporting home countries, Africans are doing a lot just to see how they can help their own home countries economically. So that's why I think one of the things they look for is how does the fund get on the ground? How do the founders do it? Who does the oversight and things like that? So if we really provide them with a streamlined, efficient way for them to be able to finance, they would do it a lot. And that's why we all are focusing, because I think when they send the remittances, they don't care about return, they don't care about where the money goes, because they send it directly to a family or a friend for consumables, whether it's healthcare or education, and they know exactly where the money is going. But when you, as soon as say it's for investment, then they ask the questions every investor asks, and they say, what is the founder? What's the viability? Where is the oversight? And things like that. So that's why we are focusing on the African diaspora, because we know that they are already sending the money. They are already interested in investing and growing the African economy, and they are very, very keen in developing their home countries. And I hope that helps.
So, Mesrat, if I can expand on that and also touch on one of the point that David raised. So David, I'm from Sri Lanka, and so I left when I was 13. So I live in UK. So I guess I'm diaspora, but also I get involved in Sri Lanka to build, to change through education. So just if I can share some of the experience of, I think it's a great point that you raised there, which is, I think when we left 30 years ago, a lot of us leave due to poverty or war, whatever this condition that these diasporas left. I'm not talking about the privileged one who left for, to enhance their life. I'm talking about the out of the 1 million diaspora Tanzanians, left, I'm sure that 70-80% is for an economic reason. So one of the things that, we used to think, so during the time that in my 30 years in UK, I used to think that, whenever I send money back home or try to help somebody, is this famous quote that I try to remember is that, feed a man for a day. And so you give a man a fish for a day, and it will feed him for a day. And if you teach a man how to fish, he'll feed him for a lifetime, right? I think a lot of the diaspora guys are realizing that, because now they have more data point, right? They're realizing that the money that's going back home, it hasn't made any huge change. It just done what that, giving a man fish for a day, right? It just literally feed him, and then we kind of literally keep them on a hook. So one of the initiatives that I tried to do recently in the last 6 months, which seems to be working, which is this. So let's say if you can segregate that diaspora. So for example, in Sri Lanka, we have a fisherman village, and we identified a village, and we found out that there was about 200 people or 100 people left that village 20, 30 years ago, and they all live across Canada, UK, and in Europe. So we mobilized all of them through that one central point of that village, right? So then we say, look, how much they've been sending over the last 10 years versus so they all have a lot of assets they left behind. So they left lands, and because of war, they left land. They left their the houses. All of that stuff is they left. But they do have this kind of a selfish motivation, which is that they want to increase their asset value. So if their village does well, because of the Sri Lanka itself is booming in the center where the capital is, and the south and north, but certain areas are still left behind. But in order to, so because they have all this left in land and assets left behind, there is a selfish motivation for the diaspora to improve their village, right? So instead of saying, just send money to that village, which they've been doing for the last 20 years, and they just been eating it, and the next day they come back and say, look, can you send more money, please? It's been happening for the last. Now what we're trying to do in that village is that, why don't we build a small center, education center? Why don't we find someone who's very passionate about that village, who wants to actually, just like George, who wants to introduce education in an innovative way to the kids in the village, those fishermen children who don't go to school? Why don't we bring them into school? So that seems to be having, so the impact that I've seen in the last 6 months through approaching it this way, where giving someone a skill, where it's going to give, feed him for their lifetime, versus whenever they call, be giving a fish for that day, it seems to be working. Because now what's happening is that now there's other organizations coming in and say, hey, why don't we start a football tournament within that village? Now the peripheral, all the other villages are participating in a kind of annual football. So it's just, I think the domino starts to fall. But I think someone in the diaspora or someone there in Tanzania or in Sri Lanka have to recognize that. So someone like George, we had to use diaspora that way, where give them the motivation where, if the village builds up or if the village get educated, it's only going to help their assets and, whatever they have left behind 30 years ago, 20 years ago. That seems to kind of resonate more with the diasporas, right? Because they feel that they're getting some kind of bang for the money, and then it gives that extra motivation. They seeing their village is getting, improved, and it's going in the right direction. I think that's coming back to David's point. I think that's the way I feel that some of the newer, like a younger diaspora people would like some initiative to take, in their villages that they left behind. Then, it gives us more motivation to participate and give more money.
Right, I agree, and I guess it's a lot of the movement from looking at things as charity versus social entrepreneurship, and social entrepreneurship is a way to build wealth and economic the economic feedback loop, so to speak, where charity is only one way. So it tends to be only one way. So yeah, totally understand that. And I guess the other point too, with the education market and looking at the your startup, I've also seen, we've done some work with telemedicine. My background's more medical device, and with telemedicine, and did some things with M-Pesa, and saw the growth of how telemedicine really grew in Africa and in Kenya and many other markets with M-Pesa, and using that as a platform for other services with and cell phone build out and things like that. From an infrastructure standpoint, what do you see that's growing in Africa that your platform can grow with? How much is dial up? How much is mobile? How much is broadband? What do you see your IT platform building on for the education?
Yes, so I think the technology part of Africa is rapidly growing right now, and we can see a lot of changes, and we can see a lot of growth in terms of access. When you look, for example, the data around the mobile penetration right now, almost 80% of for example, for the case of Tanzania, 80% of the people right now have actually access to mobile phones. So we have seen a lot of growth, but also the government is trying as much as they can to make sure that they provide internet access to the users almost everywhere across the country. And that has been the issue across not only Tanzania, I think within Africa and across sub-Saharan Africa. So I've seen it firsthand, and I think looking at it on the future perspective, I believe that we are going on that direction, and I hope that we can. The platform will be easily accessible later on compared to what it is right now. But I think the technology is rapidly growing, and of course, it's actually for the better.
That's excellent. And just my closing point is that, for 20 years, 15 years now, there was a report that came out from Merrill Lynch. I used to be an investment banker for a while with Merrill Lynch. And when we were doing some banking work, there was a report that they put together in 2007, and it was forecasting the growth of Africa. And there was a lot of naysayers then, but ever since then, plus the work that I did before that with medical, I've always said that Africa is the next Asia when it comes to technology and economic development. And if you look at a 20-year cycle and where we are right now in 2021, that it seems to me that Africa in general is poised for growth, and entrepreneurs like yourself are really going to be the pioneers in that. And 10, 15 years from now, we'll look back and it was almost like looking at China in 2001. Africa's going to be growing, so I'm excited about everything happening, and I definitely want to look into your company more. So thank you so much for.
So, George, and I am from Africa too, and I see what you're saying. But entrepreneurs in Africa, basically, I'm one of them, and I do have a social network, and I started, back in November last year, and the finance aspect of entrepreneurship, the finance aspect of our company became a death threat to our company. So how can Africans solve this kind of problem? I do have a beautiful social network, but I don't have money to back it. So what can I do about it?
Thank you. George?
Yes. So thank you very much, Sarah. So I think, as I said earlier, for example, for us, we also faced the same challenge. Like we couldn't not get the access to funding early on. But what we decided to do, we decided to look on it on another angle, where we decided to commercialize the product, making sure that we generate some revenue, we get some customer in. Then that actually helped us to actually move along the way. And of course, you can also look on other options. Like, for example, for us, we also have some aspects whereby people are coming in and do some support in terms of grants. We have some additional value-added service for the schools. We are offering an alternative ways of generating mostly revenue, but also getting the money in. So when you look for investor immediately, especially when you are as a startup, like as early as you say you are, I believe that it's very difficult to get external funding. But you can always see the alternative, like finding the model where you can generate revenue, or looking for alternative funding like grants and cloud sourcing. But I'm not so sure if it works better in Africa, because I haven't tried some of them, but I know that can be an alternative for you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
But I do have another question too, if you let me. I see. To find investors, if, for example, I'm from Ethiopia. In my country, nobody believes in technology, in stuff that we do. Africans are, there is technology right now, but, elders, the last generation don't believe in technologies like this. So what is the solution for this?
Yeah, so I think you are facing the same challenge which we also faced when we were starting. Like most of the people still don't know the importance of using technology. So I think that's also it brings another challenge for you as an innovator, as a startup, to make sure that you actually address that. And of course, for example, for us, what we are doing, apart from just offering the solution to the users, we also trying to make sure that we can also provide education around that. So instead of me just giving you a software to use, or a mobile application to use, I actually train you to how the platform or the solution can actually help you before giving you the solution. So that's also add another cost, another burden to the company or to the startup. But I think that's the best way to actually change the mindset, because like if people don't understand the value of the product, I think it will be difficult for you to actually sell the product. So I think that's the approach which you have been using, and I hope that will help you also to reach that point. Thanks.
Yes, absolutely. That's a lot. And the other thing is, I'm sorry, we are trying, so many marketing strategies. I am a software engineer. I don't know nothing about marketing, and that's another problem. And nobody's with me. I'm working on myself. And I am trying, to generate revenue from the app itself. We are using Google AdWords advertisements like YouTube, and that's helping out a little bit, but it's not enough. And I
Okay,
hope I'm. Mhm.
Sarah, I do understand that Messi is actually from Ethiopia as well, so maybe we can take it offline so that
Okay,
she
okay.
may be able to advise you on that. Is that okay?
That's all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, anyone else have any hot comments to make? Because we actually passed 50 minutes from 1 hour already. We have already run it for 1 hour, 50 minutes. But if anybody else on stage have a hot comment for George? Great. Okay, if not, George, I believe you have a very good session today, and many people on stage has actually offered to, reach out to you offline to actually continue the discussion to see how they can support you with your startup and your vision. So, with that, George, I will let you have the final word to drop any plug that you want. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Cherry. So I think, first of all, thank you very much for the session. I think it has been very exciting for me. It has been a learning moment for me. I've had a lot of insight, which I'll definitely use. I've seen a lot of people we can actually partner. I've seen a lot of connection, which we actually made. So I'm really, really excited about this, and I hope we can reach out. So please reach out to me anytime. I'll be really, really happy to talk to everybody who is interested to help us in one way or another. And I hope we can take this forward. And of course, right now, just one last thing that right now we are actually actively fundraising. So if anyone who can connect us to investors or partners or donors who can actually help us to scale this innovation across East Africa and even across Sub-Saharan Africa, I'll be really, really happy to have a conversation with. Thank you very much, Sherry. Back to you.
Thank you, George. Well done. Okay, with that, thank you very much for spending 1 hour, 15 minutes with us in this room. If you are or if you know startup founders who wants to have a stage like that, a 1 hour stage to increase their visibility, be it for fundraising, for traction or for hiring, just let them reach out to me and we'll try our best to arrange a session for them. Okay, if there's no other comment from anyone on stage, we'll be closing this room.